It's more than wonderful to be here with you wonderful, wonderful Albertans, even if you're angry. I've been practicing law in Edmonton for 25 years now, mostly in civil litigation, so I am trained very well in evidence. I've also been very political. Some of you may know that I'm the original co-founder of two of the first Wild Rose Party movement. And when the merge was happening with the Wild Rose and the PCs, I said repeatedly, do not do it. Kenny is a bad man. Do not trust him. And I was persecuted. And 1 week later, we began the Alberta Advantage Party that took everything from the Wild Rose Party. Presently, I'm the president of the Alberta Advantage Party, but I'm not here to talk about politics. I'm here to talk about law. And I'm so grateful for David Dixon. I'm going to talk about 4 topics. The first is your employment. The second is our children. The third is about the tickets and the constitutional criminal process. And the fourth is about solutions and implications for where we are. Now, first of all, many of us are facing employment challenges if you're not vaccinated. At least that's the message being given out. Okay, first of all, as a starting point, an employer has the right in Alberta to hire and fire as they wish, provided they give proper notice or pay in lieu of that notice, instead of that notice. There's a chime going on, that's okay. Those minimal notices are set out in the Employment Standards Code. If you have a collective bargaining agreement, you are in much better shape than the average employer in Alberta. But that still might not save you. The courts also give extra pay in lieu of notice. If you're probably about a 4-year employee, up to a 24-year employee, you will likely get 1 month of pay per year of service up to about 2 years. And that's where it cuts off. So if you've worked 24 years or more, you could get good money from the court, but it could take you some time. Now, this injection or this vaccination is a medical procedure. It is a change of a term of your contract. You've signed an employment contract. If that's added, it's a change to your term of contract. And in law, that is called constructive dismissal. They've taken away your contract and given you a new contract to sign, but it takes 2 to contract. Do not sign that contract by getting the injection, because then you have agreed to the new contract. Your employer cannot force you to take this injection. They can coerce you to the hilt. But if you are not medically certifiable as being of unsound mind, nobody can hold you down and shoot you up. Don't take it. Go to work. Do your job and do as best job you can. And simply don't take it. If you are called in, ask for the evidence. Ask for the evidence that if you take this jab, there will be no harm to you, and that this will prevent you from getting this COVID, flu. If you are forcefully injected, that is a criminal assault. But nobody has a right to a job. Nobody. Have a plan B. Figure something else you might be able to do in life to feed yourself, if it comes to that. Make sure you have a plan B. Do not quit. do not get injected. If you are fired, hire a lawyer to file a wrongful dismissal suit, get your EI, and sue. Also make a complaint with Human Rights Commission. Now we're going to move to our beautiful, beautiful children. The Alberta government is executing cruel and unusual punishment on our children. Absolutely inhumane. And that extends to our trustees, our principals, our health minister, our education minister. There is no evidence that masks stop the transmission of COVID. These masks restrict our breathing. God made us to breathe oxygen, not recycled CO2 and toxins. An inquiring mind must ask, why is there such a focus on masks? Why? We have amongst us today a beautiful woman named Jamie Saleh. She is Edmonton's own gold figure skating medalist. Jamie and I have written to the public school board trustees, the Edmonton public, as well as the superintendent and associate superintendents, our school principals, and the ministers of health, justice, education, and the premier, and ask them, where is your evidence that masks on children will in any way stop the spread of the COVID virus? Only one public school trustee responded. It's Trustee Esther Brooks. She responded both to Jamie and I. First of all, she responded to me saying there was a safe return to school plan in place and a bunch of other information that skirted the subject. So I wrote back and said, I really do appreciate you responding, and I truly, truly do. But where is your evidence that masks will inhibit the spread of COVID in children? Now, you will recall that the government, Kenny and Dr. Hinshaw, our chief medical officer, said, the government and Dr. Hinshaw are not going to have anything to do with what the school boards do in getting the kids back to school. Do you remember that? Yeah. Well, about a week ago, I got a call from a supervisor in support services, Trustee Esther Brooks, that asked her to phone me. The same lady phoned Jamie. She didn't answer my question, but what she did tell me was that the school boards are getting their directions and their information from Dina Hinshaw and Alberta Health Services. Now, I want to tell you about Alberta Health Services. So I said to her, would you put that in writing for me? She said no. So who's lying? Dina Hinshaw and Jason Kenney? Now, there's a lady who's flown under the radar. Her name is Dr. Verna Yiu. Y-I-U. She, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't mind being wrong. I believe she is straight from Wuhan, and she then came and studied at the University of Calgary, and now she's the head of Alberta Health Services. Her name is not spoken. So any one of you who have children, Please do the same. Figure out who your trustees are, the principals. Write a letter. Ask for the evidence. Ask for the evidence of why masks make a difference on children. Or anyone, but mostly our children right now. Okay, so now there's one more thing I want to warn you about. And it is the legal consequences of the chemicals, the masks, the isolation, and the vaccine in the children. I have heard that the government intends to keep the masks on children until they are vaccinated. A parent can sue. A parent can sue for damage to the children, but these poor children cannot sue until they're 18. A child has the right to sue their parent, their teacher, anybody within 2 years after they turn 18 or they discover they have been harmed. Now, as I've said before, I'm trained in evidence. I've been watching all of this, and right at the beginning, I was all sold in. You could not have dragged me to my office to work during the first lockdown. I was absolutely bought in. Then when I started thinking about the predictions that Jason Kenney made in April of 2020, I'd been watching the evidence where the COVID was, making sure not to shop in those areas where there was one COVID case. It didn't add up because I knew the data so well. When he predicted that within a month, if we took all serious measures, we'd have 300 to 3,100 deaths by the middle of May 2020. And if we did nothing, we'd have 600 and some to 6,000 and some by the next month. I'm going, there's not that many sick people in Alberta. So that's when I began to doubt. And from there on, my eyes have really, really been opened. So here I am, and I cannot remember how I met David, but I am so, so, so thankful. So that's the children. Now I want to talk about the tickets and what David and Josh keep talking about with the difficulties with process. And I'm not here to criticize anybody who's tried. We were all newbies, not really knowing what was going on. But from the beginning, and John Carpy with the JCCF I've known for 15 years in politics, he's my friend. And by no means am I trying to criticize him. But right from the beginning, by myself, I was thinking, I do not see how he can be successful in the end to stop this because of the processes he chose. And I kept my silence to myself because I was not in it. So you can't criticize if you're not in the game. But when the government started closing down churches, and I was made aware of Section 176 of the Criminal Code, it's an indictable criminal offense to interfere with a church service. I phoned a law school friend that I went to law school with at U of C, and I asked him about this. He looked it up and said, yeah, you're right. And so he said to me off the cuff, I don't see how the JCCF is going to win this. And I said, there's two of us in the world. And then somehow, I can't remember, I met David Dixon. And suddenly, there were three of us in the world. So I've been working closely with David because I think he makes sense. And one of the reasons I think that he... some people get grumpy with him is because he's so straight up. But I'm that kind of person too, so we get along. So when you get ticketed or when you get charged, tell me what you have to do for a plea. Somebody put their hand up and say, what do you do when you get ticketed? What do you do? Okay, somebody said you plead not guilty. There's something you do before that. Don't talk to the police. There's something else you do before that. You get full disclosure. Okay, so we've had a plethora of tickets. Now, Dina Hinshaw has put at the top of every one of her approximately 70 orders, I, Dina Hinshaw, have the evidence, I'm paraphrasing, to convince me that COVID is so awful and so terrible and so dangerous that I'm making these orders. And then a little while later, she makes her second order, and at the top of it says the same thing. I, Dina Hinshaw, have the evidence necessary to make these orders. But you know what? She's never given the evidence, and no lawyer has been able to make her. So what David has been saying, folks, is that the lawyers must insist on getting Dina Hinshaw's evidence because she openly claims to have it. So I'm acting for a little diner in the middle of nowhere called Mojo. Mo stands for Monica, Joe stands for Joe, a greenhouse and a diner out in Parkland County. And they were ticketed for not complying strictly with the lockdown for the diner. And then a few weeks later, they were ticketed for not closing down their cowboy church, which they've held in a big shed on their property, right through everything. Okay? So this is a family-owned business come down through the family on the property. David and I worked on the disclosure letter together and gave it to the Crown. We want all of Dina Hinshaw's evidence. The first time at court, all they did was combine the two tickets. Second time in court, I had just sent the disclosure request. The fruits of the investigation disclosure had not been prepared yet by the Crown. And so the Crown and I, and this is the top guy in Alberta, going after a little diner, wrote back to say, I think you're trying to do a constitutional challenge. Why don't you get on with it? And I said, yes, maybe we will be, but it will be under Section 7, the right to a fair trial. Their latest tactic is, oh, you must be wanting evidence from AHS. And that's a third party. Okay, you're going to have to make an application for that. And my response is, no, I don't want third-party evidence. That's, for example, a psychologist who has some evidence when somebody's had, an impact, like some trauma. No, I want first-party evidence from Dina Hinshaw. And with David's help, I'll go to the Supreme Court of Canada if we have to. A big problem with making a constitutional challenge is this, okay? The best case that gives an example of when rights can be infringed is drunk driving. You can't go pie-faced driving down the road, even though it infringes on your freedom. That went to the Supreme Court, a BC case. And the courts, of course, said under the Charter, the government can infringe on our freedoms if it's justifiable in a free and democratic society. The problem when you make a constitutional challenge on any of the sections in the Constitution, it almost flips the burden of proof. Okay, so in a criminal case and in a ticket case, the Crown has to prove your guilt. But when you raise the Constitution, you have to provide the evidence also of why it's not justifiable. It doesn't seem fair, but that's the way it works. So if we are going to say it infringes our freedom, for example, not wear masks here, and thank you for not doing that. It's not just the government that has to prove it. we also share some of that burden to explain and bring our experts. And I think that's where the constitutional lawyers have fallen. They've expected the government only to provide the evidence. They did not get their disclosure at the beginning before plea. You cannot just expect to get your disclosure at some other time. It's the wrong step in the process. So I've tried to talk to one of the other lawyers involved, but he did not return my call. But that's the gist of what David's talking about. Now, I want to talk also about solutions. People have asked me about class actions. There will very likely be that time to do that. I don't think it's now. I think it's because there haven't been cases going through the court with evidence. I hear the court is divided. I hear the judges are saying the lawyers have not been asking the right questions. So people are saying the judges are corrupt. I don't believe that. I've been in front of these judges. They're very picky. They're very, very picky. They want to do what's right in the processes. So I'm not critical of the judges. We haven't been doing our jobs as lawyers. Right now, there are many, many medical and scientific experts who are saying this vaccine is deadly or could cause serious harm to people. And those people are increasing. Those experts are increasing. I, as a lawyer, must assess what experts say, and I must decide on my own, as the judges do, which experts have more credibility. And the first of all, of course, you don't want to have an expert that's being paid by Pfizer, for example. So there will be a time for class actions, but I don't believe the courts are ready to approve a class action at this point. Now, individual businesses, I'm asked whether that can be a class action, maybe long time in the future, but I believe the individual business who have financial losses must bring their lawsuits individually. The next thing I'd like to touch on is self-representatives, okay? People who self-represent themselves in court. The problem really has come down to, again, not asking the right questions, not knowing what to ask for, asking for something that doesn't matter for that appearance. We need more self-representatives because there aren't enough lawyers. There really, really aren't. But please don't do it by yourself unless, and I would honestly say, get some advice from David, if nobody else. He really, really does know the law. There's one more thing I'd like to touch, and I don't think David's going to knock me off here for saying it. Pull out your phone and look up a verse in the Bible. It is Matthew chapter 24, verses 21 and 22. I'm not a biblical scholar, but I've dusted my Bible off. I'm reading it like a lawyer now. I've got 5 translations, so I read them side by side, word for word. Okay, so Matthew 24, 21 and 22 says this. And in that chapter, Jesus took his disciples up to the Mount of Olives. And first of all, he said, you know, this temple is going to be knocked down, right? And they're going, oh, my goodness. And he says, and they say, okay, what else is going to happen before you come back? And he goes, oh, there's going to be this, and then this, and then this, and then this. And the word and then is sequential, okay? So then he goes into a Q&A. And people get that part mixed up with the first part. So if you go through that, and then this will happen, and then this will happen, and then this will happen, way down at 21 and 22, it says, there's going to be something that's going to occur on earth. It's going to be worse than any other time to this point, and worse than any time going forward. So that's not the end of time, but there's going to be this horrible thing happen. It's going to be distress and oppression and tribulation. So people who have been believers, and I grew up both Catholic and Protestant, I heard about this terrible tribulation. But, okay, so what is this horrible thing that would kill everyone if it took its natural course, okay? That's what it says. If it takes its natural course, everyone would die. I used to think maybe nuclear, but that hasn't happened. So now with these predictions about these vaccines, I'm thinking, could that be possible? Okay, so it also says, but everybody's not going to die. This is going to be cut short for the sake of the believers. What does that mean? I really don't know. But people who are truth seekers will make a difference in this. People who are truth seekers will make a difference in this. I phoned our own Dr. Roger Hodkinson to say, and I asked him several questions. I basically cross-examined him, and I said, my first question was, if everybody on Earth gets this vaccine, what would be the consequence for humanity? He said, it would be catastrophic, because the Japanese have figured out that these spike proteins, which were supposed to stay in the arm for where the vaccine is, are going through the body, and they're super concentrating in the ovaries and the adrenal glands, which is for hormones. It also goes in the bone marrow, in the spleen, in the lungs, in the heart, and in the brain. So these spike proteins are going through us. But we only get ovaries once in our life. Sorry, you men don't get any, but we women get them once in our life, and that is puberty. We don't get any more. So this is catastrophic for fertility. So that's what I'd like for you to think about. Your fight is worth it. We are fighting for our rights to live, our children's rights to live. And thank you, thank you, thank you. I cannot say thank you enough for what you're doing.